Hi, welcome to another Type with Me. In this week, I'm gonna talk about arrays, semigroups, and monoids. I'm very excited to talk about that because, in essence, arrays are a very important step within functional programming, right? So first of all, if we talk about an array, well, we have for loops, right? So here we have a for loop where we do certain things, and then we have our sum, for example, which is a 6, right? So we can write it like this, with let e equals 0 and then I, and then through the length. It's a very classic one to write this, right? So if I run this, I can very easily do that with run index.ts. You will see that we get a 6, right? But we can also do let e in foo. Of course, I need to save this. And when I run this, you will see that we also get a 6. It's shorter, it's easier to read, so that's something that you also can do, right? But this is just a classic way of writing this and solve this. So if you really want to go over into functions, we can, for example, use the reduce to calculate the sum there, right? So to have it a little bit more clear, you have something like this, right? You have a con sum equals foo, then we can do a map on that to just change a little bit the x value there. Then we can do a filter on top of it, and then we can do a reduce there. So something that we could do, right? Of course, if I want to go back here, for example, and you want to have just the sum of everything there, well, if I go back here, you will see that that's also very easy to accomplish. So we need to do something like this now, right? Reduce, previous, next, we do previous plus the next one, our initial value is 0, and then of course we get the result of 6. If we execute this, you will see that we get 6, so very cool to do so as well, right? But we can also do that within the functional TypeScript library. So let me see and show you how to do that with functional programming TypeScript library. So when we want to convert it towards the array functions within the functional program TypeScript, well, we can very easily do that by just importing that library here in our program, and then we can just do or use pipe here. It's the most important function of the functional programming TypeScript, and then add here these functions, right? So we pass here an array, and that array will do a lot of things throughout this the sequence. Here we just say, okay, we have a number and we pass that number through, and then we can do a reduce where we have a previous and a next, and we just we accumulate them together, right? We have here the sum, and that sum will be 6. So here we go, we have 6. Of course, we can add certain things like this. We can add a filter, right? And then, of course, I add here 4, 5, 6, maybe, or just 4, 5. Here, I do something like -1, and you will see that we still get 6. Alright, but okay. If I do something like +2, for example, and I execute it, you'll see that you get 10. So yeah, you can very easily extend it, right? So array functions, great. Well, if you come from a Python world, you know that there are a lot of array functions and array extensions, right? Like, for example, the zipped. Well, within TypeScript and JavaScript, you don't have that, but within the functional programming, and this is the TypeScript functional programming TypeScript library, you have that. So you have here zipped. And if we execute this one, you will see that we get the following result. He just combined the two, right? 1 with an A, 2 with a B, and 3 with a C. So these kind of functions are very useful in certain programs to use that as well. So this is zipped. Well, another thing that's also very annoying, or could be very annoying, is type safety, right? One of the things that you could have, for example, is that here, when we ask for foo 4, we get no compile error, and x will be undefined. So also there, if we assign something to the 5th index of the array too, we also don't get an error. In Java, for example, you get an index out of bounds exception. In TypeScript and JavaScript, you don't have that. So that's a little bit of a pity, right? So with fbts, we can do a lookup within our array. And here we can do a lookup and say, okay, we want the first element, we want the second element, but you can also do something like, okay, we want the 5th element. I'm just gonna print that out for you. So I need to save it first. And then of course I need to run it. And when I run it, you get something like that. Here you get a sum value of 2, a sum value of 3, but you can also have a tag which says, okay, none, it doesn't exist. So that's also very valuable to work with, right? Another cool thing here is that we could, for example, say, okay, foo, when the foo.length is bigger than 0, we can have something like this, the first element a.head, and then we get the first element, right? So if I do console.log, first element here, when we execute it now, you'll see that the last element that we had here would be the first element of our array, right? So that's also a possibility that you can do a.head. So you have non-empty array functions as well, and also there you have a head function. And so if you execute that, you will just see that we get a 1 out there. What it does is it just doesn't give you the tag sum and then value, this kind of format. It directly gives you the real value itself, right? So it's interesting to notice that that's also possible. So next thing that I want to show you is semigroups. So semigroups here is something where you can have 2 values and we want to go to 1 value. So in that regard, it's very powerful, and I'm going to show you certain examples how to use it and what the possibilities of that are. So one important thing to notice is when we are going to use here semigroups, you don't need to concat it, really. You just need to produce a number here, right? So that's a very important one. So here, for example, we have a semigroup, and that semigroup returns just 1. So whatever he gets in, he just returns a number, and that number is 1. So he doesn't care about the inputs there. So another example could be semigroup max, where we have just x and y, and we just say, okay, what is the maximum value of x or y? So that's another one. So within functional programming TypeScript, we have Monoids, and it's just an extension of semigroup where we have a read-only empty, right? And that's just a default value when your array is empty. We want to return something. So I'm going to remove this, and we are going to import here monoid. And then, for example, we can build upon that a little bit further, and we have something like monoid max, where we can have the concat of the semigroup max, right? And then we have here an empty, which will be a number of the negative infinity, right? That's something where we start from. So whenever you do a monoid max, you always get some results back, even if your array is just empty or doesn't or is not be an array at all. You have already certain monoid functions there, something like monoid sum, for example, but you see here we have also monoid all, monoid any, monoid product, monoid string, right? So I just advise you to look into it and see what the possibilities are before you just create your own monoids, right? But for example, this one is a great one, or could be a great one. I'm just gonna remove this here and just show you a little bit. So we already had either, already had seen either, right? So also here we could have something like a partition map where we have an array, and that array can be of the tag foo, right? And if that's correct, we just do dot left, and otherwise we do an e dot right. And then here we have left foos and right we have bars. And then of course we can do something with the sum here of foo and the max of bars, and then we can just multiply them here. So if we have here something of type foo, right? So I'm going back here. So here you can say, okay, we have an interface created for foo and we have an interface created for bars, and we have just an array where we have a type foo and we have a type bars element. We can look into it and see if we are of the type foo, well then we put it into the left, otherwise we put it into the right. And here we can have two values out of there. One are the foos, right, and one are the bars, and then there we can do something like an array fold map where we use this monoid function, monoid sum, where we just have the sum of all the values in foo. Of course, here in the fold map we need to say which is a number. So within foo we have a function f which will give us a number, and the same here is for monoid max. And here also on bar we have a function which will give us a number, right? Again, this is just an example that I want to give you, right? Just to understand, to let you understand what the possibilities are and how it could be used. But again, just play with it. It's a concept that's been widely used within functional TypeScript, functional programming TypeScript, right? So in that case, it's very important to understand that, like we saw the last 2 weeks, we had the either, and also here you see some kind of nice example where you can say, okay, either it's foo or either it's bar, and then of course here we can have the outcomes of that. So even there you can go a little bit further, right? Because now it's been hard-coded that for foo we use monoid sum, and for bar we use monoid max. But you could even create something where you just provide it for them, right? So we can do something like this, where we have a number, and that number needs to be examined, and when that's examined we can say, okay, we want to compute, and monoid sum needs to be the monoid for foo, and monoid max needs to be the monoid for bars, and otherwise it needs to be reverse, right? So these are our possibilities that you could do. Here you have that compute part here, right? So yeah, it's nice. I I hope you liked it. I hope you understand what monoids are and how you could use them. I also hope you understand what semigroups are. And see you next time. It was a wonderful time to explain it to you, what it is. It's also a very powerful concept to understand. And again, if you don't use functional programming TypeScript, still use these functions when you are manipulating arrays. It's very important to use functions when you are manipulating arrays. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope to see you next week for another video around functional programming within TypeScript. And please, when you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe to my channel. Bye.